politics lead. The executive producer of CBS News 60 Minutes, Bill Owens, resigned today. Now, normally that would probably not be news that we would bring you, except the circumstances rise to the level of, well, alarm. Owens said in a letter to his staff that, quote, over the past months, it has become clear that I would not be allowed to run the show as I have always run it, to make independent decisions based on what was right for 60 Minutes, right for the audience, unquote. And the context here is key, because President Trump has been suing CBS News and its parent company, Paramount Global, for $20 billion for what the president calls, quote, unlawful and illegal behavior, unquote, though his accusations, according to legal experts, do not withstand scrutiny. This is what happened. Last fall, 60 Minutes interviewed Vice President Harris. President Trump declined the show's offer to sit down with them for an interview. During the Harris interview, 60 Minutes correspondent Bill Whitaker asked the then sitting vice president why Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was not apparently listening to the Biden administration. Now, a preview of her answer ran in a preview clip on CBS's Face the Nation on Sunday morning.
The work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
The next day, however, 60 Minutes ran this answer when it ran the actual edited interview.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Now, CBS News explained the discrepancy, saying that they merely ran two different parts from the same longer answer, and under pressure they revealed their transcript, and that is indeed what they did.
Boy. So we got to talk about the mainstream liberal media fuming over the fact that 60 Minutes / CBS, they are slowly but surely bending the knee to President Trump when it comes to this lawsuit that was issued by the president against the network for basically news distortion, okay? Everybody remembers the CBS 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris, in which CBS had edited the interview to make it seem like Kamala Harris was more competent than she actually was. And President Trump decided to sue the network, claiming that this was done on purpose, again, to make Kamala Harris look good. Now, the liberals are saying that this lawsuit is frivolous, that it's not going anywhere, and that they want CBS to fight it out. However, CBS, it looks like they don't really want to fight it out, that they kind of want to settle in the same way that ABC settled with President Trump because George Slopopotamus decided to defame the president on national television over and over again. ABC decided to settle. CBS, it looks like they're going to settle, but part of the reason why they're going to settle is because the owner of CBS, which is Paramount, you have Sherry Redstone, who controls Paramount. She is seeking to sell CBS to Skydance Media, which is a company owned by billionaire Oracle founder Larry Ellison. And because this massive deal would require the approval of the Trump administration's Federal Communications Commission, a lot of people are saying that she is selling out the integrity of 60 Minutes to get rich, right? To essentially financially benefit from this merger that they're trying to do. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. All I know is that 60 Minutes is liberal propaganda, and they've essentially told executive producer Bill Owens that, hey, you no longer can have editorial control over this network independently due to the fact that you messed up, right? That you distorted the program in favor of Kamala Harris. We're being sued for it. And, we're going to take away some of your power. So this guy basically resigned in protest. And now, again, the media is upset. They're really, really, really upset about this.
Paramount Global, which owns CBS News, is currently trying to merge with Skydance Media. And in order to do so, they need the approval of the Trump administration, specifically the FCC. And under the FCC's brand new Trump-supporting commissioner, Brendan Carr, it has been suggested that Trump's news distortion allegations against 60 Minutes will be considered by the FCC before any merger is approved. Now, Sherry Redstone is the majority owner of Paramount, and she stands to make a fortune if this multi-billion-dollar deal, this merger goes through. And it seems as if Sherry Redstone is likely to bend the knee to Trump and settle this allegedly frivolous lawsuit. Now, Bill Owens, until today the head of 60 Minutes, rightly believes that 60 Minutes has nothing to apologize for. And that's what's going on. That's the context. One 60 Minutes source tells me, quote, the lawsuit was baseless. He wouldn't apologize, meaning Bill. Bill Owens wouldn't bend. He fought for the broadcast and for independent journalism, and that cost him his job. It's shameful, unquote. A second 60 Minutes source tells me, quote, Bill has widespread support at 60. He's dedicated his life to CBS and the broadcast, and this was his last act of dedication to it. It's like a guy who has been battling for months against an attack, unable to defend the broadcast from inappropriate corporate influence. He pulls the pin from his last grenade. He sacrificed himself, hoping it might make our corporate overlords wake up and realize they risk destroying what makes 60 Minutes great. It seems clear now, in a quest to sell the company, Sherry Redstone and others will bow to presidential pressure. 60 Minutes is one of the crown jewels of American broadcast journalism, and they have no problem crushing it in their race to make a deal and make themselves richer, unquote. Sherry Redstone had no comment when we reached out. And that is the context of Sherry Redstone's likely bending of the knee. Hope the money's worth it, Sherry. Coming up next, the fears associated.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Clearly the media is upset. Jake Tapper is upset with CBS bending the knee. Okay, this is what they're mad about. As if 60 Minutes actually had integrity, as if it was a great program that everybody could watch and say, hey, this is unbiased news coverage. No, it's not, right? It is straight up Democrat Party propaganda, and they're upset because the Trump administration is doing something about the monopoly of liberal media propaganda that currently exists. So now they're all boohoo whining and crying, claiming that Trump is attacking journalism. He's not letting us do our jobs. Why? Because President Trump wants more fair and balanced news, right? Not 24/7 Trump derangement, which is exactly what we have now. Okay, we do not have fair and balanced news. Okay, it is nothing but liberal propaganda, and the liberal media is upset that the president is fighting back against liberal propaganda that is designed to kneecap him. So without further ado, let's go ahead and react to the CNN panel lose their minds over what's currently happening.
I think that the problem is first you had the ABC settlement that was a few months ago. And then if you now have a CBS settlement, he's going after the Associated Press. A judge just ruled in Voice of America's favor today. So you have the media will succeed in somewhat, just like you're reporting earlier. I mean, if CBS were allowed this to move forward, it's likely going to be in their favor. But there are institutions that feel like they need to bend the knee to Donald Trump. And this isn't just about the media. It is about law firms. It is about universities. It is about potential nonprofits.
And it's not just about bending the knee. It's also about paying bribes to Trump. The ABC settlement was nothing short of backsheesh.
Yes.
And the CBS settlement would be the same.
And it sets a terrible...
No, the ABC settlement was them understanding that their employee, George Stephanopoulos, defamed the president. When George Stephanopoulos accused the president of rape, saying that he was found civilly liable of rape when that just factually was incorrect, that is defamation. They keep pretending like, oh, it's so frivolous. There is no real complaints here. And it's like, no, there are actual real complaints. When you go on national television as a so-called journalist and you claim that the president was found civilly liable of rape when that's just not true, that's factually incorrect, that is defamation, okay? That's defamation. And the media is upset that ABC decided to settle the lawsuit instead of trying to fight on behalf of their propagandists defaming the president. These people make me sick. They make me so sick.
Precedent. I mean, one of the things that Trump has tried to do is he's trying to silence the media. And by having these agreements with ABC and potentially CBS, with law firms, with with potential universities, it's silencing institutions that don't agree with him. And that is where I think the American people should be worried about.
And a First Amendment violation, to be sure.
Absolutely.
Look, I understand Sherry Redstone's position. She's a majority shareholder. She has a fiduciary responsibility to the other shareholders to try to get this deal done. I know if I owned a percent of it, I'd certainly tell her you need to figure this out by any means necessary. As it pertains to the gentleman resigning, I mean, to your point, Jeff, I don't know what significance this will hold. I don't know what percent of Americans still watch 60 Minutes.
Would you?
I
mean, you
don't know the influence.
You say
of this
figure it
particular
out.
show
Do you?
anymore,
Would you? You said figure it out. Would you advise Sherry Redstone to do what is being alleged here, which is perhaps pressure CBS?
I just know in business, when there's a deal of this magnitude on the table, your shareholders do not want that deal.
Sure, Michael,
to
what does this do to the value of CBS, the former Tiffany network, when people cannot know whether to trust it anymore, when they wonder what stories they'll be, and I know you laugh, Scott, because you think no one's
I think people have lost trust in it for a lot of reasons. It has nothing to do with this deal.
But I think now,
Facts. Facts. People already don't trust 60 Minutes. People already don't trust CBS. It's overt liberal propaganda. See, that's the thing about these people that really like blows my mind. Okay, they pretend as if people look at these networks as nonpartisan, unbiased source of news. That's just simply not the case. Okay, clearly CBS, 60 Minutes is all left-wing propaganda. So to pretend as if because of what's happening right now, people are going to lose trust in 60 Minutes, that's silly because people have already lost trust in it. Nobody trusts it as it is right now. Even before the Kamala Harris interview, nobody really trusted 60 Minutes.
now the problem is that it ruins its brand with an audience who did trust and did care about them, and that affects the value of the company.
AKA liberals, right? AKA it ruins its brand with liberal. That's what they're concerned about because neutrality to the left is unfair, right? This is what they believe. And you know what's so funny about all these people boo-hooing and crying about President Trump trying to silence the media, right? Silence dissenting voices, which I think is an exaggeration of what is happening, is that none of these people had anything to say about the left-wing liberal media and big tech working together along with the White House, Biden's White House, in order to silence right-wingers, right? To silence conservatives, especially during the pandemic. None of these people cared about freedom of speech or the First Amendment when that was happening to private citizens, right? When we had censorship happening all over the place, primarily against conservatives and independent conservative media outlets. Now, all of a sudden, President Trump gets in office and ABC and CBS, they're settling some lawsuits that President Trump brought against them. And now all of a sudden, Trump is attacking freedom of speech. He's attacking the institutions of the First Amendment. And it's like, okay, where was all this when the censorship was happening during the pandemic against conservative media, right? Conservative outlets. Where was all this concern? Where was all this concern? Oh, it was nowhere to be found. They actually were pro-censorship. But see, when the pendulum swings the other way and they feel like they're being censored, right? Or that they're being attacked for their viewpoints. Now all of a sudden they got a problem, right? They're upset. Again, it's just funny how that works.
I take that point. I guess I would offer a different position here. If I were to run CBS, my bigger question would be, how do I maintain whatever market share I have? And right now they got a viewership problem.
Well,
so I'm not really
does
sure.
60 Minutes really have a view? I mean, 60 Minutes is different from
Well,
overall,
CBS
but,
as a whole
but
has a
60 Minutes in
viewership
particular
problem.
is a flagship
This is the bigger question.
magazine.
The bigger question is that mass media are dying. I hate to say this in the middle of mass media.
I mean, we all know
but
that.
mass media are dying. And so if you try to think that we're going to please everybody, those days are over. You've got to stand on some principle. You've got to stand for something.
AKA you got to stand for the left. You got to stand for the Democrat Party or else you're bad, right? You're bad. Again, these people, they don't care about overt partisanship. What they care about is if you're not overtly partisan in favor of the left, right? That's what they care about. That's what this dude is straight up complaining about on CNN. He's already admitting that, yes, you have to have a slant. You have to have an angle. This is what he's saying, right? And he's upset that 60 Minutes is being forced to be more neutral, right? To not be biased towards the left. See, that's the game that these people play. Okay, they hate neutrality and they complain about neutrality because they see neutrality as a disadvantage towards them. If you're not biased in their favor, then basically you are against them, even if you are straight down the middle. Straight down the middle to them is far right, right? And that is essentially where these people at. This is what they believe. And again, this guy is like a journalism professor. So again, imagine what this dude is teaching kids in school about journalism, right? That, oh, well, if you're not pushing left-wing propaganda, then you're not doing journalism correctly. That is what these kids are being taught. And that's why you have the issues that you have with Harvard and some of these other institutions, is that they are just bastions of left-wing propaganda. They are radicalizing students into far left authoritarian ideologies.
You've got to stand on some principle. You've got to stand for something. You've got to be somewhere in the spectrum. And if you think you're just going to make nice to everybody, the problem is that the right wing, hello, Scott, has taken advantage of this situation, I think, quite cleverly, quite wisely. They've played into a weakness.
What situation?
The situation of media being under attack. And so they've created a situation where...
You've almost got it. Keep going. What the right wing is taking advantage of is finally the American people saying enough is enough. They're tired of feeling like the mass media screens out one viewpoint versus another in political coverage. They're tired of media institutions favoring one party over another. They're tired of narratives over factual stories. If I had any advice for 60 Minutes or anybody else, it would be just cover the news and try to be fair about it and stop putting your finger on the scale, especially during campaigns.
You're talking about the old mass media myth that you could have this thing that was in the middle. The Walter Cronkite saying, that's the way it is, when it wasn't for many Americans the way it was. When people were pissed off.
People back in those days trusted the media, did they not?
No, they just couldn't be heard. Because there was no two way. Now we have the internet.
Look at the Gallup polling. It was here, and now it's here. It's fallen off of a cliff.
Yeah, we do have that Gallup polling about trust in media. And now, as in recent years, and let's be honest, Scott, a lot of this is driven by the rhetoric on your side of the aisle. I mean, it's not.
You think it's driven by the rhetoric and not the performance?
Absolutely. Okay. On the question of whether what is Trump's interest in this? That's one of the questions.
Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Look at Abby Phillip doing the same thing that Stephanie Rule did, right? I did a video yesterday about Stephanie Rule being confronted about the media and their distortion of coverage when it came to Joe Biden and the Biden White House. And she essentially tried to defend the mainstream liberal media like Abby Phillip is doing. Well, no, it's actually the fault of Trump. It's Trump's fault, right? It's Trump's fault that people don't trust the media. No, it's not Trump's fault that people don't trust the media. It's the media's fault that people don't trust the media. Again, these people take no personal responsibility or accountability for anything. The fact is that people don't trust the media because these people have lied about almost every major story in order to smear Trump or to protect Democrats. They lied about Hunter Biden's laptop. That was a real story, and outlets like CNN claimed that it was Russian propaganda, that it wasn't real. Okay, CBS, also another outlet as well, too, that ignored the story until a real journalist from CBS, Kamala Harris, came out and basically said that, yeah, they were suppressing the story. Okay, and as a actual investigative journalist, I wanted to talk about it, but CBS, they didn't want me to talk about it, right? So again, we know for a fact that this stuff happens, but yet again, these people continue to blame everybody else except themselves for why their ratings are at an all-time low. Again, there are not many institutions in this country more unpopular than the mainstream liberal media and the Democrat Party, and that is for a reason. Okay, and these people, again, they refuse to self-reflect. They refuse to acknowledge their mistakes. They refuse to acknowledge their lies. They refuse to acknowledge their propaganda. And as long as they continue to gaslight people and say things like, well, it's Trump's fault that people don't trust the media. As long as they continue to do stuff like this, they're never going to gain back trust, right? They're never going to gain back trust, okay? Yeah, keep blaming Trump. Keep blaming Trump for your own failures.
Is it to have media that is in the middle, that is fair? Here is just a sampling of what has been happening at the White House as Trump has, he's entitled to do this, but invited very sycophantic media into the White House. Listen.
Why don't you wear a suit? And you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if you do you own a suit?
Right. Will you guys also consider releasing the president's fitness plan? He actually looks healthier than ever before, healthier than he did 8 years ago, and I'm sure everybody in this room could agree. Is he working out with Bobby Kennedy, and is he eating less McDonald's?
Photos have emerged of Senator Van Hollen sipping what appears to be margaritas with Abrego Garcia down in El Salvador. Do you encourage other Democrats to fly down to El Salvador to meet with this illegal alien who's an accused wife beater?
I like this guy. See, now this is the kind of a reporter we like.
Trump is not interested in middle of the road Walter Cronkite reporting. And I think,
well, neither is the Democrat Party, right? This is why Nancy Pelosi always complains, even on MSNBC and CNN, when they're not peddling Democrat Party propaganda hard enough, right? So let's not pretend that both sides don't want favorable coverage, but let's be real. The establishment media, as it is today, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, they give sycophantic coverage to the Democrats, right? See, Abby Phillip, her argument against those other journalists that she doesn't like because they're more right-wing, I could use that same argument against the liberal media, against CNN and how they cover the Biden White House, right? And what they do, okay? Y'all remember when they were out here talking about, oh, well, the allegations against Hunter Biden, it just has everything to do with Joe Biden loving his son, right? And Joe Biden was just loving his son. That was it. That was the only thing that was happening when it comes to Ukraine, right? Y'all remember that type of propaganda coming from the media, okay? Yeah, let's not pretend as if there's not sycophantic coverage of the Democrat Party from the establishment media as is. So if you let other people into the White House, that balances that out. I think that that's an overall good thing, because as it is, if those people weren't in the White House press rooms from those other media outlets, then it would be nothing but left-wing propaganda in there, okay? That's what these people don't understand. They see themselves as neutral, but no, you are overtly left-wing. In fact, they don't even think they're neutral. They'll tell you out loud, hey, we're not neutral. We everybody got a slant, but we just don't believe you should have a conservative slant. We don't believe the conservative slant is legitimate. We only believe that the left-wing slant is legitimate because the facts and the truth happen to reside on the left, right? This is the argument that they make for the excuse for why they're overtly biased. Well, we're not biased. The facts just happen to lean left. That's what they say, even though that's completely and totally not true.
I think it's also completely ahistorical to describe Walter Cronkite as somebody who did not have a point of view, as he very famously did. But Trump is not interested in that, Scott. He's not.
Of course he's not. No politician, no president, Democrat or Republican, wants to be pilloried every day, and all of them believe they're being treated unfairly, and they all want to be treated better than they think they're being treated.
So is this about trust in media, or is it about bringing in more media that is favorable to him? I think that's the question.
But my point is this. Yes. If you're CBS or any other news outlet, the reason that you have lost trust ought to be obvious to you, and the way to fix it also ought to be obvious to you, and it has nothing to do with Donald Trump and everything to do with the product. Just try to make a better product that appeals to more people. And the way you appeal to more people is by not crapping on half or more than half of the country because of their values and political viewpoints.
I think that is a fair, just if we were sort of on another planet, out of context, it is a fair description of what is necessary in this moment. But I think in the context of this particular moment, where the pressure is coming from up high, the question is, what does the administration want? What would be the price that Sherry Redstone has to pay in order to get a yes on their deal?
There's no price you can pay. Look at what happened with Columbia. Look what happened to law firms. Look what happened with the AP. If you bend the knee, you get kneecapped. And I think to the point of the Associated Press, what should have happened is the rest of the press should have walked out. I was at an event at Columbia yesterday where the dean of the journalism school there asked that question of A.G. Sulzberger of the New York Times. And there was resistance to that idea. But as Jelani Cobb, the dean at Columbia, said, what you'd end up with in that press room then is, and these are my words, the freak show that Trump wants. Trump tries to devalue media. Why should we value his freak show there? Leave it to the freaks.
I think there's a
I think that the freaks on the left. Let's be real, okay? You want to talk about the freak show? The freak show is the Democrat Party and the mainstream liberal media. Let's keep it all the way 100. That's where you want to go. So, I mean, listen, here's the thing. What these people are upset about, they're upset about neutrality, right? President Trump is allowing a bunch of outlets to have a voice who otherwise did not have a voice, right? And again, what makes them less legitimate than the people that are there? Again, it's very simple. It's their political slant, right? That's really what it is about, okay? That's exactly what it's about. But regardless, Trump is allowing more diverse voices in the room, and these people are complaining about diversity. That's what they're complaining about. That's what they're complaining about. Ultimately, CNN is still there. MSNBC is still there. Yeah, the Associated Press is having some problems. But, I'm just saying that for the most part, the establishment legacy media is still there. President Trump is just allowing other voices in the room, and these people are boo-hoo-whining and crying about it, right? And when, in my opinion, that creates more neutrality when you have other voices in the room. Because, again, the left-wing liberal media, they are overtly slanted towards the Democrat Party, but they don't want anything outside of that. Any sense of neutrality is a threat to them, and they're showing you that right now with their boo-hoo whining and crying about 60 Minutes and CBS. Okay, well, 60 Minutes has to be more neutral. They need to stop distorting their news in favor of Democrats. If they stop doing that, then, hey, they ain't gonna have no problems, right? But, again, according to the left, that is an attack on free speech, and that's a terrible and bad thing if you don't just allow them to run overt propaganda while claiming to be news. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.